Let me introduce a new project. This is thanks to Ryan from Terrain Crafters United, a Discord group, which is what also influenced me and inspired me to do the shed build last week. The challenge for March is to make a temple. Now, I have been planning and gathering materials and ordering supplies and gathering miniatures and all sorts of stuff for 2 or 3 months now, with the aim of making a serpent or snake based temple for my battle company, the Kana Chameleons, because obviously from the serpent riders in the Haradrim, I've come up with the idea, and maybe it's canon, maybe it's not, I've no idea, that the Haradrim potentially worship serpents, at least partially, and so they should be some kind of a temple, and that's going to be a background and a backdrop for a lot of photographs of my battle company. I was not going to start this yet, however now I am, because I've got until March to finish this, certainly enough to enter the challenge, and let's see whether I could do something about winning. I didn't win with the shed, but then I had no intention of. It was more of an inspiration and a motivation than a prize winning attempt. However, I think this is going to be pretty cool. What I'm about to do, which won't be on camera, but I'll show you the results of it when it's done, is get my pencil and my paper out and start drawing. I aim to do a 6x4 board, yes, 6 foot by 4 foot board, which will have 3 sections, 3 4 foot by 2 foot sections, which will be able to butt up together. And the first third is going to be the avenue and kind of processional towards the temple. So that won't actually have any buildings on it, potentially maybe some little small ones, but not the actual temple itself. The other 2 foot by 4 foot sections, so a total of 4 foot by 4 foot, is going to be the temple complex itself. And when I say complex, I mean complex. I have all sorts of ideas that are bubbling around in my head, and it's going to be playable, it's going to be multi-level, it's going to be mostly inside with rooms, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. So I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to go away and start drawing and try to come up with something interesting, but that also does suggest the serpent in its design. And when I've got something, I will show you, but for now I'm just so excited I wanted to record a little segment to camera and explain my plans so we can see at the end of the month how close I've got to achieving them. So I did my planning and I did a sketch, and I've come up with a concept which you can see here. The concept is that on this side we have a third of the board, so that's a 2 foot by 4 foot section, which has a snaking path designed to look like a snake's body leading up, and this is a rise, so the land level will actually rise from this end up to the edge of the board, and it snakes up towards the grand entrance of the actual temple, which sits across these 2 boards. This is stylized to look like the head of a snake, as you can see, hopefully, my terrible drawing, and it will be playable inside and multi-layer and everything like that, so there's a lot more to go on that in terms of detail, but that's the concept and that's what I was aiming for. Now there is one other concept which my friend Alchemy suggested, which is to have 2 snakes twining together and potentially try and do something like that. I need to draw that up and work out how well that's going to work, and I'll be trying to do that today. However, what I have decided is roughly my scale, my sizes, and also my construction technique. I'm going to make the temple separate. I'm going to make it so that it is actually sits on a base itself and can be lifted off of the terrain base and etc for storage purposes and access and what have you. To do that, I'm going to cut up some XPS sheeting into 10cm high strips, because that's how high I want to have each of my floors. It's going to be quite a grand building. And I'll also be taking the texture off the sides of the XPS. This is because of the pain I'm going through at the moment on the Barlin's tomb build, trying to cover that up with other materials, and that's just a pain and taking ages and really annoying. So anyway, that's the concept, that's where I'm at. I'm going to get that done now on the Proxon, and I will be back on this project with another update very soon. What I'm going to do now is demonstrate the walking fingers technique that I'm using for cutting the edges or the texture off of these really long boards. So I'm going to put my mask on because this is nasty stuff. And if you watch my fingers, you'll see how I'm working it. It means that I get a very steady and even cut. This build is big. It's one of the biggest I've ever done, and I'm really enjoying it. What I've decided to do to make this a little easier for myself to move forwards is take a large cardboard box, which I flattened out here, and measure out the 4 foot by 2 foot section, which is going to be one of the boards that I'm making, and then I'll get another one of 4 foot by 2 foot. So eventually I'll have a 4 foot by 4 foot of cardboard on which I can draw out where I want the temple walls to go and where the internal walls are going to go, to give myself an idea of a layout without gluing things down and feeling too pressured. And that will then enable me also to cut out a template which I can transfer to my wooden board, which will probably be plywood in the end, and cut that out so I can cut once there, having measured 400 times, which is the best way to be accurate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure out 4x2 on this board, and I'm going to cut it out, and then I'm going to do the same on the other board. So let's see how successful this can be. So it doesn't really matter too much about 100% accuracy, because I am going to be actually cutting this out down smaller once I've got the shape of the actual temple in. However, 4 foot is 48 inches. So that's 4 foot. And that is a stupidly returning tape measure that returns too fast. What I'm going to do first is measure the 4 foot along and then trim all this off, because that is going to make it easier for me to use. So 4 foot's there. There we are. And let me go up this end and do 4 foot as well. So there. You can see how well I planned this out, can't you? And this is why I got myself a wireless microphone. Brilliant purchase. You know what I need? I need some clippers. I'll be back. I think the battery ran out just before the end of cutting out these last night, but I didn't worry about that because you'd seen most of it. I've measured out 2 sections of cardboard that are 2 foot by 4 foot, and what I've just done, not on camera because it was a little bit of a convoluted process, is mark using pencil and make notes of some lengths, some rough outline of where the exterior of this temple is going to be, and looking at it, it's big. I may have overstretched myself with this project, but we shall see. I always worry about that, and then you just crack on and get what you can done. So what I'm going to do now is show you roughly what the plan is. I'm going to mark that out in the Sharpie so that we can see where the actual wall edges are. And then I'll turn the camera off again and I'm going to start to lay out a rough interior. The idea for this being that this be playable as well as obviously a huge piece to look at and use for backdrops. So yeah, I'll point the camera down a bit more so you can see the board a bit better, and I'll get the Sharpie out and we'll start drawing some lines and I'll talk you through the measurements and the thinking really. So yeah, let's go. So the very fine lines you can see there were made with a pencil because I was making mistakes. As you can see on this right hand side, I started off a few times before I came along a line that I was pleased with. So first of all, what we've got is at this point here, this is where the path for the first third of the board, which I'm not designing yet, will join in. So you can imagine that this is actually above the table a bit because the path will be rising up to it, and I'm not entirely sure how high, but at least 10 centimeters, if not more. And then there'll be a gate. So this is where you'll be able to get an entrance to the temple, and that will be the only way in and out that there is. Now what I've got here, I'm just about to draw in, is the way that the walls will actually retreat back from the neck. If you remember, this is stylized to look like a snake. So it will go back like that, and let's do the other side as well for completeness sake. It is basically, it repeats itself. This is a mirror line. So like that. And then what it will do is the angle changes slightly and it goes up a little further at a slightly sharper angle or less sharp angle, and then it straightens out as you get to the top. So this is what the first board will roughly look like, and this is the external walls. This is not the internal line, this is the external line. What I'll be doing is, when I'm happy with this cardboard, I will take these measurements that I've got, transfer them over onto my plywood, and I will then cut these shapes out of the plywood. That will then be my floor, and I will probably have two shapes basically the same, and they will be able to sit on top of one another and will be able to be a mimicking of two stories. So that's the plan. As we go on to the third board, what you can see is that the straight bit continues for a little bit. That will make it easier for me to join up and make it a bit of a tidier thing all around. And then it returns inwards here at a sharper angle. Now what this is going to result in is quite a lot of dead space over here, which I'm going to be considering what to do, whether it will be waterfalls or whatever, or maybe a small snake temple on either side, mirroring. I'm not sure, but we'll come to that later. That's not part of this first build. I don't need to worry about that. The first build is literally just the temple. So the temple goes to the snout, which is what that is. And then it goes across the center line and is mirrored on the other side. So there we are. One idea I've had for here is that this end be the holiest of holies, being the furthest away, and also that it may be open and it can have teeth, stylized teeth, so that it looks like the open mouth of the snake, and maybe even some kind of a tongue in there, but we are starting to get really advanced then, and maybe stretching my abilities as well, so we'll see if that happens. And potentially having a open shaft here and here that will be, when you look down on it from the top, would look like the venom pits on a venomous snake. So there we are. That is the shape and the extent of this crazy build that I'm planning. And I'm quite pleased with how it looks. I think it does have the shape of a snake if you squint and close one eye and know it's supposed to look like a snake. But yeah, it's pretty good. Well, I'll close off this segment by just showing you what the walls that I've cut, and I've now managed to finish trimming them all down. It took a couple of days. That is how the walls are. So that is the height of 1 story. So again, it's quite imposing, they're quite tall. If you put a miniature against it, it's basically 3 times the height of a 28mm miniature. So in real terms, you're looking at about 6 meters, which is a big building, but that's what this is. I think I'm going to stick with that anyway. I don't think I want to have it lower. I think I like the idea of having a big, spacious and quite imposing building. So there we are. What I'm now going to do, as I say, is get my pencil out again and start sketching out an interior. And I need to decide whether I want it to be mirrored or whether I don't mind that so much inside. So there's a lot of thinking yet to do, but progress is being made. I've done a sketch. Let me talk you through it. This is the shape as you see here, and this obviously is slightly not the same forms, it's slightly off, but it still gives the rough shape of the exterior of the temple, which I've also marked in the thickness of the walls, as you can see. So the concept is you come in through the gate over there, come through the gate into a big square courtyard. This courtyard could potentially have a snake pit in it, which I've got on order, which should be coming in the next couple of days. And off of this, there are going to be 5 doorways. These doorways lead into 2 kind of ante-rooms, potentially for maybe washing in or whatever, so for preparing yourself for ceremony, and then to a central corridor which leads off and has a couple of other rooms off the side of it as well. Gets to a cross, at least a T-junction. I'm thinking of blocking this off, but it goes to a T-junction which takes you left and right to stairs. Men to the right, women to the left is the concept, this being some regressive religion. And then these stairs will take you up to the next floor. This is obviously the ground floor, the initial one you enter. Each of the other doors off of the central courtyard will take you round in a loop and will take you also to the worship area, but will have cells and storerooms and what have you coming off either side of it as well, so there'll be doorways off it. At this end is the most holy place, and the concept for this little area here is potentially this is a secret viewing place, or maybe it could be the priest's preparation chamber, or even if I'm thinking this might have human sacrifice, this could be where the poor victims are kept and thrown through into the most holy place. Now, as you get to the next floor, I've obviously not laid out the actual floor diagram just yet. I will do that soon, but I have got some ideas. One of them is that the courtyard will be open, so it will at least be open to the, so that will be not there, so you'll be able to maybe have some balconies and a bit of a kind of atrium coming in there when you enter. And the other thing is the most holy place will definitely be 2 stories at least, and you will only be able to get into it via this first floor, or maybe even via the floor above, I'm not sure, via the roof, but it needs to be quite a private way of getting into it, and that you will get into it via a stairway which will be made to look like a snake's tongue. This is a nice idea and I like it a lot, and I think it will look great. So there we are, that's a rough idea of what I've come up with while I've been kind of sketching away. My next task is going to be to cut this shape out and this shape out of some plywood, and I'm probably going to cut it out twice. So that won't be done now because it's night time and Rose is asleep, and big as this place is, the sound of me cutting and sawing is still going to disturb her. So I'm going to leave that for now, go and do something else, sleep on it again. I'm dreaming about this project, that's how much I'm enjoying it, and I will be back with my power tools and getting ready to actually do the floor plan and stick the walls on tomorrow, hopefully. As part of this project, I have bought these moulds. They're actually for pastry, I believe, and also for oven-baked clay. Now, I didn't want to use oven-baked clay. This is actually an opportunity for me to try casting powder, so basically plaster of Paris. Got a big pot here. Would you believe I'd never really used this stuff before, so it was quite a thing for me to start this. So I've done a few, I'm not going to pretend, and this isn't my first attempt. If I pan right, you will see there is what I've currently made. However, as you have also just seen, panning right again, very gently, there we are, I have a huge huge project to do, and so I was looking at that thinking that's going to be quite a lot, and now I think I'm just going to be making these for days and days and days, because I'm going to want some on the path, I'm going to want them to decorate the walls, and yeah, I may even see if I can find some more different of these different moulds and order them as well. What I thought I'd do is quickly go through how I am using this casting powder. It's taken a few goes, but the last time actually came out the best so far. So I think I'm slowly but surely getting the hang of it. So let's get this open. I will skip this bit because it makes a horrible noise. Just like that. So what I've got are these measuring cups, which I bought for use with the Freeform Air, which is also a video of which is in progress. And because I've only got these very small moulds, it's actually really hard because you haven't got, so it says to add 1 kilogram of casting powder and 750 mils of water, which would be quite easy to do. But I'm doing here about 30 mil. Okay, so it's a much smaller quantity, and that makes your quantity control quite difficult. So this is how I've managed to get around that. 30 mil or so into my little mixing pot. And then I've got a small jug here, which has on this side 25 mil and 50 mil. And I'll put just a bit over 25 mil in. Okay, as you can see, just because it's such small quantities, it's actually quite difficult to control. And as I've said in the past in other videos, bear in mind you can add more water, you can't take it out. I'll then pour not quite all of it in, and I'm looking to get a specific consistency. It's not milky, that would be too thin, but it certainly isn't as thick as it suggests, because if you do it as thick as it suggests, if you look at this mould in particular, the depth of that is quite a lot, particularly around the nose and the snout. And so to be able to get it to actually pour in there, you need it quite a nice consistency, quite a liquid consistency. There we are. So mix it well. And that's pouring around. As you can see in there, it's shifting around quite nicely. What I'll then do is I'll pour into the deep one first, because the other thing you're doing is, as you're doing this, as you pour it out, your plaster is actually going to get a bit thicker, because obviously you probably haven't mixed it very well like me. And so if you've got a mould like that one, which you want it to be going into the depths, you want to do it first. And then what I've been doing is giving it a gentle tap. Doesn't matter if it spills, it's only plaster. It's going to be all worn, all sanded down anyway. So then I will pour into each of the other moulds. Okay, leave the big one for last, because what I'm now going to do is tap it and push it around with my kit, actually dining room knife, table knife, which I use a lot, and just make sure that it has gone into all of the crevices and all the cracks. Now this is in no means going to make something which is good enough to potentially model, model to actually game with, but for what I'm doing, which is looking to do architectural elements, these are going to come out absolutely fine. And for my first attempts, I think this is probably a good place to start, where I can always, you know, any miscasts or whatever, or slight mistakes, just look like aging of the actual carving on the walls. So we'll get as much of that plaster out as we can. Now we'll put it into the big one, and as you can see, I've got just about exactly the right quantity, because I've done this a few times now. The first time I made way too much. The second time I made too little. Isn't that always the way? So there we are. That will now get left overnight, because it's getting late now. but possibly 3 or 4 hours. Again, I don't follow the instructions, I leave it longer than it says, because the first time I did it, I broke the first one I touched, because I did it I left it for as long as the instructions said. So I leave this overnight, or I'll probably be able to get 3 castings a day, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. So tomorrow I will show these ones being opened on camera, and we'll see whether I've made a mistake or whether they've come out as well as the others. So yeah, that's using casting powder and using that in some moulds which are actually made, like I say, for oven baked clay, or for actually making fancies or decorations on cakes. So if you're a bit unsure, yes, you can use these with casting powder. It's the next morning, so I am going to risk damaging these on camera. Fingers crossed they've come out okay. As you can see, they are hard. And these, as I say, are the ones that are bought, and they're made actually for use with baking. But as you can see, they pop out very nicely out of the mould. Now, as it happens, these aren't the best ones I've done yet, but they're not so bad. I've got a little bit of a missing gap at the bottom of the tail there. Let's pop this one out. You can see just how easy it is to pop these out. It doesn't take much effort at all, just to make sure you haven't got your fingers in the wrong place on the back side. Oh, that has come out well. Look at that. That one's one of the better ones. Little divot there, but that's pretty good. And there we are. What you can see, or hopefully you could see, is just how easy it was for me to pop those out of their moulds. These are very nice moulds to use. They're not difficult at all. What I'll do is I'll zoom in so you can see the quality that has been achieved, and I'm pretty happy with that. To be honest, those ones have come out nicely. So that's how I'm going about doing this casting. I'm gonna, as I said in the previous clip, have to make lots. I'm just going to be basically continually filling these casts and popping them out and filling them, popping them out, maybe 2 or 3 times a day for the next little while, so that I've got loads and loads and loads, so that I can decorate that huge expanse of wall. So there we are, onwards. Having made the progress with the designs yesterday, I'm now in the workshop and I'm going to start cutting some wood up. So what I've got here is my 3mm probably plywood, quite thin, and I'm going to measure out 4 foot by 4 foot from this board and cut it in half, and onto that will go the layout I drew yesterday. I will eventually be looking at cutting out the odd shape to go on the second floor, but I'm going to focus on the first floor initially and see how well that goes. So it's just going to be 2 rectangles, each of them 4 foot by 2 foot. So I'll measure it out with my nice builder square here, and then I'll get cutting it with my circular saw. I have evicted Angela from her desk in room 13 because I'm a bad person, obviously. But what we've got here is the wood. So I cut this, and I've also transferred onto it the shape which you see on the cardboard above. This is going to be the ground floor. So I'm currently debating whether I'm going to cut it out, whether I'm going to cut it out with a bit of lip, or whether I'm going to leave it exactly as it is. And I don't need to decide that right now. Maybe tomorrow I'll need to make that call. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to get some strips of thicker wood, so square wood, which I will cut roughly to these lengths, and I will put on underneath. So I'll be gluing them on underneath, and also probably all the way along the edge, and probably all the way down the centre. And what that will be for is to prevent warping, so to give it a bit of structure. This eventually will then sit on a 3D terrain base, which will have the path coming up to it here, so that will be able to be sat into the base below and will work quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is take these measurements, find out how much I need to cut, go and get them cut and then stick them on and leave it gluing up on here overnight so that we don't have any warpage. As you can see, it's quite flimsy, it's quite bendy, it's only 3mm ply. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I've been down and I've cut some lengths of 3 centimetre by 1 centimetre, so very small little bits of pine, which should give it some rigidity, and I've offered that up, and this is on the underneath, so I've also drawn the shape on the underneath, which has been a good proving that the fact that I can read my diagram, which is a bit of a rat's nest of scribbles. And what I've been doing, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering how I was going to glue it and make it right. And the more I think about this, the more I think that I should just be cutting this shape out. I don't want all this flat space here. That will all be dealt with by the board underneath, which I will get cut properly and will be absolutely square. So what I'm about to do now is hope that I can do this quietly enough. I'm going to go down to the workshop, shut the doors and get the hobby jigsaw out and cut this shape out, and also cut the other one out as well. And then I will be able to put these strengthening pieces in and clamp them correctly with PVA, glue them and clamp them correctly, and leave it to dry overnight so that I've got that stable. Now you'll notice that I've not done one down the centre. There's two reasons for this. One of it, I'm running a little short of this 3x1, and the other one is I do have the snake pit coming, and that could potentially sit somewhere around here. So what I will be doing is once I've got the snake pit and I've finished doing everything, and I maybe have to drill a hole and cut a hole to sit it in, then I'll put some more strengthening pieces across, and then it will be really rigid. But for now I'm just going to do this edge just to make it a little bit easier for me to cope with. The other interesting thing is once that's cut out, you'll notice that this will actually sit, I don't know if you can see from there, but it will sit flat between the two upright bits on this desk, so it'll be nice and easy to work with. So I'm going to go and do that. I'm not going to bring you with me. I will show you what it looks like when it's cut and glued and clamped. I have just been and cut this using my hobby jigsaw, which is good enough for this and doesn't make as much noise, and I didn't disturb Rosie at all, which is a big double thumbs up, frankly. So what I'm about to do, just before I say that, what you can see the entrance, which will go here, so where the gate is, and then on this side you can see the other one that I've cut. Now I've left the nose extending because I'm not totally sure how long I want it to be, so I didn't cut it off, but this is the shape. So when you put them together, you've got that stylized snake's head appearance. So what I'm about to do now, and I probably won't do it on camera because it's going to be impossible for me to do it and not get in the way of the shot, but I'll show you what it's like when it's done, is I'm going to glue these supports on the underside, so on the other side. And as you can see, I have a big pile of clamps, and I've got many more scattered around the room. So I'll be clamping it very well in there, and then gluing it with PVA. I'm not going to be screwing these in at this stage, I don't think. The reason for that is that the next step after this is to drill regular holes around the edge, and I'm going to stick in, glue in place, some cocktail sticks, which will have the spiky edges sticking up, which will be a little bit dangerous for a while, but that will mean that when I stick the walls on, they will be pinned, and those cocktail sticks will go through the base and will go into these supports, so it will be pretty solid, I think. So I'm going to crack on with that now, and I'll show what it looks like when I've done. That's going to be me for this evening. I'm just going to do this one. As I say, I don't have enough of the 3x1 to get that done, and I don't think I want to do it yet anyway. I need to think a little more about the extent of it. That's set up overnight and is now nice and dry, so what I'm going to do is paint some PVA over the entirety of the top and also over the sides, just to seal it before I do the next steps. So I'm going to do that now. Progress continues on this build. Yesterday evening, with a cup of tea before I took an early night, I worked out roughly the shape that I want for the front door, and then I've transferred it roughly to this 10x10 or 100mm by 100mm sheet of the trimmed down polystyrene, one of the ones that didn't work so well because I'm going to be cutting it anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the Proxon, I'm going to cut it out, and the concept is that on either side of the door there will be two snakes, and then I'll be using this one as a lintel. So let me just get that in shot. You can see there that has a nice shelf, and that'll be really nice lintel, so that will go above the door. And there's enough room for me to do that and also do a little bit of coving around the door, which is what I wanted to do, so that's good. The other thing I'm going to do is I've bought some more of the, it's actually 1.3 or 13mm by 10mm wood, and now I'm going to be able to put that as bracing on the other half of the board, and I'm also going to be able to drill and fit the cocktail sticks, so I'll probably invite you along for that latter section just to show you how I'm going to do it. But there's going to be other bits of progress going on, as well as I've just been to the shops and bought myself some supplies, so onwards with this project. I've trimmed this out with the Proxon, so now what I'm going to do is cut out some card, which I'm going to use as a bit of a lintel, like I say, or an architrave around the door. So what I'm going to do is, as simply as this, I'm going to trace the edge of the door through with my pencil, like so. Okay, there we are. Not very nicely done, but that should be enough. And then what I'll do is I'll take this, and that should be about 1/2 centimetre. Yep, 6mm, that's fine. So I'm going to put it 6mm away. And then I will draw up the shape around the edge. And what that will mean is I can cut that out quite simply and stick that on, and then when it's stuck on, I'll be able to stick the other shapes on. So that won't take very long to do. It's done already. That's the shape I want it to be. There we are. So now I will get my knife and I will cut that. So the next thing to do is to mark out where I'm going to drill and put my cocktail sticks. The idea being that they'll be put in vertically, and then when I put my walls in, they'll be acting as pins, making it more secure. So what I'm going to do is just mark along here roughly regularly, and then a bit later on today I will go, and I've got a drill press, and I will drill in a very vertical manner so that they are sitting straight up, so they actually are useful and don't prevent me from putting the walls on. So that's where the gate's going to go, so I'll put the holes roughly there. And what I think I'm going to do, excuse me, is do them about roughly every 2 inches or so. So we'll do one about there, we'll do one about there, I'll do one about there. And I'm not going to make you watch me do all this. So I will turn the camera off now, and I will invite you along again when I'm about to do the drilling. So here I am in the workshop, and what I have here is my drill press with my battery powered drill, and I have set this up so that it is going to be able to sink down and drill in exactly the point I want it. So what I'm going to do now is just drill every single one of these holes out and make that, and then put some cocktail sticks in. So I will get that done now, and we'll show you what it looks like when it is completed. All those holes have been drilled, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick in a cocktail stick to each hole. So I'll put a dollop of PVA on my plate, just like that, and then push it into the hole, like that. So I'm going to go around and do every single hole, and then I'm going to leave it to dry, and I'll come back to it later. But you can see it's quite a quick process. Doesn't take very much time to do this, so it'll just take me a couple of seconds. I'll get this done now. now comes the most complicated part of this build so far. As you can see, the gate is in, and I'm now ready to put the rest of the walls on. I'm a little nervous how I'm going to do this because it involves angles and lengths and measuring and cutting. I don't really want to screw it up, but I do have a lot of foam, and so we'll just see how it goes. I'm not going to put it on camera because I'm going to be really fettling around, but I will be back to show you how I've done it. I have some plans involving measuring and angles and drawing and stuff, and I'll let you know how that goes. The other thing to say, and I will just quickly zoom out, is as you can see, that other section is still stood up at the back, and I haven't yet done the base. However, I have bought the material so I can. I'll probably get that done this evening. The reason I didn't do it is because I wasn't sure about this lip. I've kept this so that it's the full width of the 2-foot board, but I may be trimming that down. However, I've realised that I'm actually not going to be putting a wall along this bit because that will be the holy place, and it's going to be hopefully looking a little bit like a snake's open mouth from the side. So I will probably this evening as well get the 1.3 by 1 centimetre, get that right this time, across or around all of these edges, just so that it can be a bit more secure, and also then I can put the cocktail sticks in and do the walls that I want to have, certainly around this edge, that edge and that edge, so it should be quite good. And then I can start working on the interior, which I'm very excited about. So I'll stop talking now. I've gone on long enough in this section, and I will be back later to show you how well I've done it, and maybe even if it's going well, I'll give you a little demonstration of me actually fitting some walls. Okay, so I've got to the last couple of sections of wall, and I thought I'd just show you how I'm doing this, because it has actually worked out okay, and yeah, it might be interesting for you to see how I've managed to achieve this. I'm just shifting that back a little bit. So what I've got is I've got these squares, and they allow me to ensure that the wall that I'm putting in is at 90 degrees. So if I do that, then that is they are braced between the edge of the desk and the edge of the board at 90 degrees, and so they're not going to go anywhere. What I've then got is a section of the blue foam which I've cut to the correct length. What I'm now going to do is put some PVA in a bead along the base, and I'm being quite generous with this. I'm not skimping because, well, I want this to stick, but it's not the only thing I'm using that's sticking. Then I'm going to put some PVA also down the side between the two, but again, I'm not relying purely on the PVA, as you'll see shortly. So now, this is where this goes badly because the camera's rolling. Basically what you do is you push it down onto the stakes, onto the spikes. And the idea is you push it down, tight up against one, and tight up against the set squares, the 90 degrees, and it will then go in nicely, nice and tight. It shouldn't be easy to do. There we are. So that's that. And then the final thing that I'm doing is I'm getting an additional cocktail stick, which is here, and breaking it in half because I don't actually need the full length. There we are. And I'm actually pressing that in at this end. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see a bit better. Move these. So I'm then pressing it in here to reinforce the join between those two. So just use the lid of the glue to push it in. There we are. And there we are. That, even though it's only just been put in, is now really, really solid and really strong connection between the two. So there we are. That's how I'm doing it. What I am going to do also is come around and cover with filler to get texture. So any gaps I've got aren't too bad, aren't too much of a problem, but that's worked quite well. So what I'm going to do now is do the final one, which is over on the other side of the board, and then I'll leave it all to dry, and I'll come back to that either later tonight or tomorrow with the plaster. So I'm going to lounge on the arm of the sofa because the shot's hard to take. But what you can see here is that I've done all of the walls, and they're all setting up now with the PVA. And on the floor down here, let me just reach down. Opa! I have also done the Oh, put it on the floor again. Oh, it's heavy. Well, not heavy, just awkward. I've also done the little bit of wood that goes around to brace the other section of the temple. So what I'm going to do now is leave this overnight, leave that to dry and this to dry overnight. I will then come and fill the gaps. I probably won't do the plaster painting on until I've done all the walls. I'm going to be doing a courtyard here, leaving a space for the snake pit and all that stuff, and I'm going to do that in this thicker foam. But then the other walls I'm probably going to do in just normal cardboard, thick cardboard. I'm probably not going to try and do all foam, I'm not sure. We'll see. I make this thing up as I go along. So that's where we're at right now. It's on target, still on the little schedule I've set myself, so I'm quite pleased with that. Yesterday evening, while the vlog was uploading, I spent quite a lot of time drawing on this to work out where I want the internal walls to go. Now, I had come up with a plan, which I drew on the paper, but when I started transferring it, it turned out that it was just going to get a bit tight. You weren't going to really be able to get your hands into play, and it didn't look very good. So I changed my mind, which is always a good idea when you find you don't like what you've done. So what's happening now, this is where the snake pit's going to go, which is on order from eBay, should be here soonish. And this is the opening, this is the entrance courtyard, which is how I designed it originally. And here is the main access and the main corridor. On either side of that, 2 rooms, and on either side of that, another 2 rooms, which also were part of the original plan. But what I've changed is over on the sides, and I've drawn it on this side. So I did have it with another corridor coming like this. However, it turned out to be very, very cramped and not very nice, as I've said. So what I've decided to do is move the corridor so that it actually runs around the outside. So here is where the wall's going to go, and then here, and then down here. This means that all of the corridors, or every room, every access is at least 10 centimetres, about 3.5 inches wide, which means that even my big clam hands can get in and move miniatures around, and it's still playable. So that was really good. What I'm about to do now is, with it dried, I'm going to take my polyfiller and I'm going to fill in these gaps. There aren't very many. It's actually happened, the walls have actually gone on very nicely, but I do need to fill them. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to paint the entire thing with a filler, but certainly I need to do this. So I'm going to crack on now and get that done. I've gone through and I've stuck the supports underneath, bracing underneath, and I've also put the cocktail sticks along the edge. But what you'll notice is, and this is a lesson learned from the previous one, is I've not put quite so many cocktail sticks in. It was really hard work last time trying to get it all to line up and going correctly, so I've only put a few in. I ended up breaking quite a few of the ones I'd stuck in off last time. So what I'm going to do now, not on camera because you've seen this, I'm going to put the walls along this edge and the mirror side. What I'm not doing is walls along that edge. And the reason for that is that that's going to be where the snake mouth is, and it'll be done in a different way, which I haven't yet worked out how yet. So we'll come to that. So I'll be back shortly to show you how that looks. I'll spend a bit more time on this, and as you can see, I've done almost all of the walls for this side of the board. I've only not done this section here because I wanted to dry everything else, glue everything down and make sure everything was fixed in place before I put that wall in, so I can definitely get everything square and right. What I'll do now is move the camera around and show you the next thing. Over here we have the other half, and that has had the walls put on it, and it has had the filler put on those external walls. It's looking nice. What I'm going to do now is sketch in where the other walls are going to go, which I think is going to be quite basic to do, and then I will I'll get cracking on putting them in place. Quite pleased. This has been a really fun build to do. That set up very nicely overnight. So this morning I've come in and I've put this final section of wall in place. So now that side has all the walls that I think I'm going to put in. I can't think of any others I want to do. It's going to be interesting. There's some fascinating little nooks and crannies which, if this is being played on, will make it quite interesting. But also it's easy to access every part of the board. As you can see, nothing is going to be too cramped, which was very important to me because I've done this before and ended up with nearly unplayable stuff because I didn't think about the dimensions. What I'm now going to do is do the filler around all the areas which don't yet have it. So I will get that done, and I will show you what it looks like when it is completed and I'm about to start decorating and texturing. I've been doing my thing of grabbing a couple of minutes here and there during the day to work on this, and I just thought I'd stop and bring you into this decision point and this decision process, which is going to slow me down for a little bit. So as you can see, I'm working and I've put the surrounding around the edge, and I've just got to doing the corridor, which is going to come up to a blank wall at the end there because the other side is the holiest place. What I was going to do was maybe have a door here, or maybe have a viewpoint but no door. But I'm looking at it and I've got the strongest feeling that I should have, and I have thought about this a little bit in the past, but I should have stairs going down here to the lower level, which is, as I say, this will sit on top of a hill and I will be able to have a lower level, which would then mean that I could potentially have a access coming through into the holiest of holies by going down. And I'm going to have to do that now if I'm going to do it, because once this is glued in like so, I'm not going to be able to get a jigsaw in there at all to do the cutting, and obviously then I'll be not able to do this idea. So as much as I'm cracking on and I'm making good progress, I'm going to pause there for a little while, have a think and work out how I may be able to do this and if I want to do it, and then I'll have to get the jigsaw out and cut it so that I can at least have a hole, because what I'm probably going to do is try to hinge it so that it can clip up and it can be hidden, because this is a secret access to the the holy place, and people, non-priests, wouldn't be able to access it. So anyway, yeah, I am still designing this as I'm building it, which probably is the wrong way to go about doing things, but hey, that's how I am. I've had a think and I've had a chat with Andrew and a few other people, and they've persuaded me that I'm being silly. I just am overcomplicating it, which is something that does happen, and you need to be able to identify that. So I'm going to glue these in place, and the access to the Holy of Holies will be done a different way, which I will explain to you in another video. So there we are. So there we are, that's the end of video 1 of this 2-part series. I think there's going to be just another part. I think an hour or just under is long enough for any video, so I'm gonna stop it there. I hope that you've enjoyed so far, following along with this epic build. I certainly really enjoyed doing this, and watching and editing it down has been a lot of fun, remembering the challenges and the frustrations and the excitement of learning new techniques and trying new things out. And certainly I would really hope that you've picked up on that in the video and have enjoyed watching along. If you're not yet subscribed, obviously please do so. It's great to see that so many of you are out there are watching this. And don't forget to ding the bell, because when you ding the bell, then YouTube does tell you when one of my videos goes live. Though obviously Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, that's when my videos goes live. But YouTube will tell you. And what I would like to close this video by saying, as always, is thank you so much for watching Beard Clipper, and please stay safe, stay healthy and stay well at this crazy time.